meeting you right where you are on your foster care journey. This is the Forgotten Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Cabe, and I am so happy to be with you. If you are part of the foster care community, passionate about serving, or simply interested in learning more, we are here for you. In every episode of this podcast, you will hear stories from men and women who have experienced foster care to one degree or another. They may have grown up in the system, are caseworkers, foster parents, or others who are here to bring you hope or encouragement. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe and share it with a friend. And remember, you are not alone. I hope you enjoy the Forgotten Podcast. Well, today on the podcast, I am so thankful to have Kate Wilson and Cecilia Bedolla. We're going to call you Cece, though. How did I do on your name?
You did good.
Did I do all right?
How they pronounced it when I graduated my first year of interns. So
good. I've been known to mess up names before on the podcast or in general. So, I really do try. But I'm happy to have you guys on the podcast. Just to give our listeners just a little bit of insight into who we're talking to. Kate, you're the founder and CEO of Foster and Heart. And this is a nonprofit in Idaho's Treasure Valley, and you're dedicated to igniting the hearts of the community to foster and meet needs of children in foster care. I love it. It's awesome. Yeah. And Cece, you are a former foster youth, and you're also a team member at Foster and Heart. Love it. Yeah. Very good. Well, we're going to talk, we have both of you on today because we're going to talk about how your stories connect. And we're going to start with you, Kate, and then we're going to go into a little bit more about your story, Cece. So let's get right to it. So welcome, by the way. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So happy to have you. Kate, in 2007, you relocated to a new house and you began working at your church. So would you talk about what was your time at the church like, and how did it kind of motivate you or stir in your heart towards supporting families in crisis?
So yes, I got hired at my local church here in Boise, Idaho, and I was a kids assistant for about 5 years and then became the kids pastor for about 5 years. And I've always had just a heart for foster care. When I was 16, I was wrapped up in a hard group of friends. And I had a friend who had 2 children removed at 16. Wow. They were 1 and 2 years old. And I remember in that moment watching her go through that I knew I wanted to be on the other side of foster care and be there to support children and families going through that hard situation. And so I moved here. I actually moved here. I felt like the Lord told me I was going to move here and do something in the realm of adoption and foster care. And I got here and pretty much got hired at the church right away. So I thought, okay, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. But in the meantime, I basically partnered with the Department of Health and Welfare, and we did support groups here at the church. So while I was doing that passion of working for the church, teaching kids about Jesus, I was also, partnering with the department and assisting them in ways I could at the time.
Very cool. That's awesome. I think that's awesome that at 16, you kind of had this calling on your life, or you felt, and did that passion just grow even as a young age? For
sure. And for sure. It was I just assumed though, you kind of have this idea of what life is going to be like. So I assumed I'd have that typical life, get married in my 20s and then, foster. And that just didn't happen for me. And so it just kind of, seemed like I was pushing it off. But now looking back, I can see God's hand upon it the whole time. And really, because of my investment in coming alongside the department, for all those years, it's really given us favor with this nonprofit that I launched 2 years ago. So it's really cool to look back and where you think you're delayed, God is actually preparing you for what he's called you for.
I love that. So, it almost is as if he is in control.
100%. It's mind blowing. But, in the moment when you're struggling, and you're like, God, I have this dream. I want to do this.
Yes.
But I feel like XYZ needs to line up. You're just like, did you forget me?
Right.
And then you get to look back and say, no, all along his hand was upon you and leading me through exactly where he needed me to be. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, we're going to really fast forward then to 2018 when you actually made the decision to become a foster parent. Would love to hear about your first placement.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So yes, it was 2018, January 1st.
Wow.
The night before, God, I was like, when you get in those moments where you're crying out to the Lord, like, God, what do you want with my life? What do you want me to do? And I heard the voice of the Lord say, you already know. And it was like a light bulb flipped on for me. And I was like, I'm supposed to become a foster parent. So the next morning I signed up, filled out the application. And just from there, it takes about 6 months to do all the training, the background checks, getting licensed and everything. But I got my call for my first little girl. She was 6 years old. I had this envisionment. I wanted to do 5 to 12-year-olds. That's really was my niche at the church. That's where I really focused most of my attention. I thought that's my niche with age. I love that 5 to 12-year-old. And so my first call was a 6-year-old little girl and brought her home. And I remember the first 3 days was brutal. It was really I'm learning to be a mom or a foster mom, she's adjusting. And I remember praying. I was like, I think I made the wrong choice here. Like, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. And I remember God even telling me in that moment, don't talk the talk without walking the walk. And instantly my perspective changed. I'm like, I can do hard things. I'm called to do hard things. And not only am I doing something hard, but she's doing something really hard. So my perspective changed. And literally, we just became the best of little buddies. And she was amazing. And what's really cool is within 6 months, she was able to go home. And so I remember meeting her mom and not realizing the impact, my heart for her was going to be so huge. I thought I'm here to help a child. But then you get into it, you realize you really get to help the whole family unit, and watching her work so hard, do everything she has to do to get her daughter back. And within 6 months did it all. Wow. Was really amazing. And so my first home that I opened with Foster and Heart is named after her, and it's called Mimi's House.
Oh, I love that. Wow. Well, you did welcome more children into your home. What really stands out as you look back or you think about this time and your time as a foster parent? What stands out to you about that?
I think the biggest thing is probably just realizing that God is in control. And I got into foster. I wasn't even planning on adopting. I wasn't even planning on having, I thought probably down the road, eventually I'll have a child that probably will need to be adopted. But like I said, I wanted 5 to 12-year-olds, and I ended up with 5 under 4 years old.
What?
5 under. So my expectation was nothing of what God was about to do. And just realizing that, again, all along God's hand is upon you and the children in your home. And then looking at their story and how at the right time I was licensed and they were able to come into my home. It took 9 months to get them all 5 of them under my roof. But just knowing and being able to be stretched and expanded in this calling that God has through foster care has been really amazing. And so I think that's one of my biggest things.
Wow, that is incredible. 5 under. Okay, so how old are they now?
4 to 8.
Okay.
Yeah. So my youngest I've had since she was 4 months old.
Wow.
And so it's been, I literally I will cry, but I'm going to try not to. But it's just beyond anything I could have ever thought or imagined. And even, bringing my children into my home and, 2020, they became mine forever. And I got to adopt them, and looking back at all that and being they inspired this nonprofit that is now getting to come alongside and support all these more children and families. And it's just been amazing. I'm like, wow, God, you're just beyond incredible. Obviously we know that, but then when you're walking in it, it's just so surreal to live and walk in that dream coming to fruition is amazing.
Right. And I'm guessing if you're human, which I think you are, that this journey, you say God is incredible. I agree. But I am assuming this hasn't been easy street.
Absolutely. It's been a roller coaster. I remember 2020 is when I came up with the idea, and I was like, what am I thinking? Like this, everything's shutting down. Why would I even, but I remember again, I just always take everything to the Lord, and that feeling of like, this is not the wrong time. This is the perfect time. This is when it's needed most. And so, and no, it's been a roller coaster. We have had hit roadblocks and we're like, it's over. And then it was like, all of a sudden God opens a door and then another roadblock. And then it's just been amazing. And, even with the nonprofit, like we're opening our second home on the 1st, so in 2 Fridays, and just God's favor upon that, because it's not about us. Right. We really, we're just get to be that hands that God uses, but it's about the children and supporting the families. And that's what I feel like God's like, children are his pride and joy. Yeah. And so anything that we do, that we're working with children and blessing children, he's going to bless it. Yeah. And so it might not be how I thought or expected or like the vision, right? But actually it's starting to be, it's all coming like, wow, whoa, it's all coming together exactly how God planted that seed a few years ago. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing.
That's amazing. And Cece, before we bring you in on this conversation, I want to, Kate, I'm just thinking of, those times you're crying out to God. I'm just thinking of the person listening who's like, I'm in that season. I have a dream in my heart. I have a desire. It's a good desire. It's a God desire, but it's not happening. Yeah. And I'm grieving that. I want to be able to, I want to be in the work. I understand that there's going to be struggle. I just want to be there, and I'm struggling. Yeah. Can you speak, like, think of yourself at that, talk to yourself when you're struggling, or the listener who is struggling.
Well, what I would start with, something that God showed me is, the verse that God gives you the desires of your heart, delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. And like, I always viewed that as like, oh, God's going to meet this desire in my heart. But what I really believe is God places those desires in you because he's going to meet them. And as we follow his path and trust him, God is faithful to meet that desire he placed in you. So for me, this vision of even, fostering and the nonprofit, all of that was placed in me in 2007 as I'm driving to Boise, Idaho. And it didn't come to fruition. Like, we didn't even open our doors till 2022. So like,
long time.
That whole process, but everything, like signing up to become a foster mom, God expanded my capacity through, I took on 1 kid. I thought that was my limit. Then I took on 3, and then I took on 5. And then just last week I had 9 kids for 5 weeks. So it's like God has to expand your capacity to get you to that dream and that goal, but he's faithful. It just isn't going to happen how you envision it. Right. But I do believe, like, once you get to there and you're walking through that fruition of his promise and you're walking that out, all of a sudden all those puzzle pieces start coming together and you're like, oh my gosh, it is happening. Right. Like 2007. I thought it was going to happen, in a year, in 2 years, but it took many years. I think it was like 15 years for it to even come to fruition. Wow. So, yeah, I just would encourage anybody who has a dream, keep like pursuing it, keep going. Whatever God tells you to do, just take that step. Right. It might be little, it might be huge, but do whatever God is speaking to you and telling you to do.
Oh yeah. Well, and I
will also say this, God will bring the people in your life that will support that dream, who are meant to be there to support you. Don't think it's all on you, because that's overwhelming. But believe that God is going to line you up to the people. Like, even my pastor, he was like, go for it, launch it out of the church. And really, that's where I had like the courage and the strength to do it. So just tell people your dream, and people are going to come support you. And they're going to make that come to pass.
That's awesome. I love that verse, delight thyself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. And I had kind of a different realization about that verse, or perspective on it, because I think I feel like my journey, there's similarities in there of like having a dream in my heart and then a waiting season that was really difficult. But God showed me himself through it. Like he became my first, he became my everything. And so I just, the other day I was thinking about that verse going, you know what? He gave me the desires of my heart, because what he knew more than I did was that he was the desire of my heart,
Love that.
That's so good.
It's really awesome because like he's everything. He's and that gives us the courage to live with our hands open because we can say, if I have you, I have everything. Like if I have you, you're everything. And it just, it's very exciting.
No, that's amazing. I love that.
So, well, Cece, I want to hear from you. Okay. So your life looked a lot different than Kate's did. Talk about what your home life looked like growing up.
Well, I grew up in California. So I was born in Santa Maria, California. Then I moved to Guadalupe, California. I live with my mom and my dad, who's like my bio dad, and then my brother who had a different father. So it's just us. I grew up in a junkyard in California. So I was living there with my family. And then I don't really like remember too much because like, unfortunately, like trauma, it kind of, your brain kind of blocks out a lot of stuff. So like, I can only like vaguely remember some stuff, but mostly I only remember from like 2017 into like now. Even I still struggle with like my like remembering stuff. So all I remember is like we kind of stopped. We would always go back and forth, like my family, until we had my little brothers, my twin brothers. In 2008, we kind of just stayed here.
Okay.
And that was in Meridian. And then we lived in Section 8 housing. And then my dad kind of left and all of that. And I was just with my mom. And then my three brothers, my older brother, his name is Vaj. And then my two twin brothers. And I lived with them there for a while. And then my brother ended up just leaving because he couldn't take it, just the way that like my mom did things. And basically shoved like religion at us a lot and just like Christianity. And well, we went to Capital. Capital has like been my home church, and that's how I met Kate.
Yeah.
And we were I was on her dance team.
Oh man.
I did all the dances, and we'll talk about it. I'm like, oh, do you remember doing like this song? I'm like, and it brings back like memories of just doing all that.
Yeah.
So that was like super fun. And we would always go to church and stuff, but my brother just kind of couldn't take it. So he left and he went into the military. So that was like his only scapegoat was going into the military. So he got his like GED and was like, bye. And so I was here with my mom and then me and my little brothers. And like around like 2017, I won't get like too much into it, like what happened, because it is like a lot and kind of like rated R as I explain it to some people. So like in 2017, it's kind of where I don't know what really happened on like how my mom kind of just went downhill, but it just kind of started from there. And I just remember like my mom had an incident where she tried to take her life, and I end up like finding her. I was trying to help her, and I was staying with my friend at the time because I'm like around like 14 at the time, 13, 14. And I was like, hey, can I come live with you? And she's like, yeah, you don't know what to do. Like, I'm like, I don't have any other family here. I can't contact anyone and be like, hey, can I come live with you? This is like happening. And you don't want to tell your friends or like, well, like, yeah, my mom's like going through this, it's kind of embarrassing. Like,
sure.
I couldn't bring like my friends to my house because my mom would have her episodes and like freak out, and I'm like there parenting my parent and then my little brother. So I'm like, I don't want people to see this side of me,
Yep.
And so I ended up going to her house, and then her dad came and was like, hey, what's going on? And then he saw like everything and then called the cops. And then my mom ended up going to a mental institution out in Twin Falls. And the cops or health and welfare got in contact with my uncle, who's my mom's brother.
Okay.
And we ended up staying with him for a bit. They couldn't keep us. So they ended up contacting my dad, who lived out in Odessa, Texas. And we ended up going with him. He came down and picked us up. And that was the first time my little brothers ever met their dad. Wow. They were babies when he left. So that was like the first time they ever met him. Obviously, like I knew my dad. But we ended up going down there. We stayed down in Odessa. Like, if you know what Odessa is, it's just like an oil field. Like, there's nothing out there. Like, we lived in a trailer out there.
Wow.
So that was fun. Yeah, so lived out there, and he was with his ex-girlfriend. That wasn't the best situation. So I was like they would have fights at night, and I'm like trying to like, cover the door, make sure my little brothers don't come out. I'm like, I do not want you to see this, like trying to protect him as much as I can. Obviously I did my best, but even now they're like, oh, do you remember when this happened? I'm like, wow, how do you know this? Like, I thought I did my best to like protect you, and so did that. And then my mom ended up coming out because she like did all this stuff that she needed to do. And I told my dad, I was like, I want to go back with my mom. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, I love you, but like, that's my mom. I ended up just going with my mom. And I remember my mom telling me, she's like, I'm sorry, I'll never do this again. And then it happened again in 2018. And so June 18, 2018 is the day I came to foster care with my little brothers. I was 16, I want to say around that time. 16, I was about to turn 17. My little brothers ended up going out to Mountain Home with a family. I went out with a family out in Boise, but they ended up moving to Idaho City because that's where they had a house at. And we went out there. I tried to get in contact while I was talking to my caseworker and stuff. And I was like asking her, I'm like, well, what can I do to get my little brothers back? Because I'm like, I know them. I want to take them. Like, I still tell them to this day, I'm like, you guys are my kids. Like, they're my babies. And they like even say that like, we're your kids, because I raised them. Like, I know what they like. I know what they don't like. Like, I do everything. But I was like doing everything. I was going to join the military to legit get them back, because that was like the only way. Like, I have a financial income. Wow. I was working for the government, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, I legit got in with the Army, and I was doing all my testing, getting fit for it. Like, I was doing everything to get that. Obviously, that was not the Lord's will. So I am now, which I'm very grateful for. But I just was like doing everything and anything I could to get them back. But now seeing it, I am grateful that we kind of got separated, because I was able to find my own identity and who I am, and not like, oh, you're not a mom. Like, yeah, from like a young age, like I had to put away my childhood, like, kid, and like be an adult and like get my stuff together, unfortunately. Yeah. But it was really nice. But even still going through that, like, I still wasn't a kid, but I was able to be like, oh, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. Like, I was able to like focus on myself and stop like trying to uplift everyone, which I mean, I still do, but like, I find like healthy boundaries on how to like balance it all. Yeah. But it was really good during that time, and just being in foster care and going through that, I would never change it for the world. Wow. I was even talking about it with the Lord last night. Like, I was talking to him, like, I'm so grateful for like everything I went through, because like feeling like, obviously, like those are like times I would never want to do again. Like being depressed, being suicidal, being alone, being like feeling like all these like horrible things, and looking at it now, especially like the teens that we get, especially like girls, I'm like, oh, like I can go through that. Like I went through the exact same thing. I understand like what you're going through may not be the exact same thing, but I can relate to you. Like I went through the exact same thing. And like kids, when I tell them like, oh yeah, I've been in foster care, like I was in there, like you were in foster care? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I didn't know that. I'm like, yeah.
Probably instant connection.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially with like the girls and stuff. And it's just like insane, just like seeing it like into now, and just like all of it. And like, I remember when I met Kate again, because I started going back to church, because it's just like everything I went through, it had related with church, unfortunately, and everything was twisted to me. And I went to one of our CYA, and it was like during 2020. So we were like doing it out in the lobby. And I remember I was, my pastor Cece, she's like, I remember her saying like, I feel like the Lord is trying to tell some of you guys something. Like, you guys need to get yourself together. And I was like, oh, that's me. I need to get myself together. And, you know, even going through all of that and like being out of it and like, you know, doing not like the whole 9 yards, but, you know, like during your time as like a teenager, even going through that, like, the Lord was always with me. Like, I would always think about like the Lord, like everything I would do. It's just crazy. Like seeing it now, like everything I would do, I think about the Lord, like just everything. I would just think about it. I mean, I wouldn't like read my Bible or like pray or like do that, but he was always with me and like always reminding me like, hey, I'm here. Like I'm here with you and stuff. And just seeing that. And now, I remember I was listening to one of our podcasts that we have for young adults, and it was Pastor Cece, and then you were on the podcast, and I remember her saying like about foster care, how she was doing fostering heart, and I was like, oh, when I see her Sunday, I'm gonna come talk to her about it, and I was like, I got her. Yeah, and I was like, hey, Kate, and she was like, kind of looked at me, and then she's like, oh my gosh,
well, they grow up so fast. You're like, wait, I feel the same.
So, Kate, you knew her when she was a little dancer on the stage at church, right? On the dance team.
And then obviously we kind of, you know, I didn't see her for a long time. I signed up to become a foster mom. I actually got my first placement the day before she came into care. So I got June 17th, 2018, and she came in June 18th, 2018. Yeah. So it was like our path it was crazy because if I had known, I would have for sure taken her on. Even at 16, I'm like, yes. But it's just crazy. Then we talk about our stories and how they intertwined the whole time. And I had no idea this little 8-year-old that I knew was going to be in foster care at 16.
Wow.
Wild.
So you went up to her, you heard the podcast, you found her in church. Okay. Yeah.
So, and then I was like, and then I told her, I was like, hey, like I was in foster care, and then I heard like you're on the podcast as Pastor Cece, and I was just kind of telling her about it and like all of that. And then we end up like meeting up and just talking about it, and then she was telling me about her vision and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm like, let me like join in and do this. And so like I ended up like applying and doing all that. But I remember like I was talking, because I was even talking to my foster mom, who I still talk to this day. And I was talking to her, and I was like worried because I'm like, okay, what if this is going to trigger me? This is going to trigger me. This is, and then, you know, just like different things, you know, it's like going to come back to you. I mean, it still does. Like even when I'm in like the house, like certain things, I'm like, oh, I've been here before, you know, just like those little things that your like mind likes to remember. And I remember there was like one time, and I was like talking to the Lord, and I was like, Holy Spirit, what did Jesus say in the Garden of Gethsemane before he was going to get crucified? And he said, let it be your will, Father, and not mine. And like legit, when I spoke that, like the Holy Spirit's like, hey, this is like why you went through everything you went through was for all these kids. And it was like, I can't explain to you like the feeling that I felt when he like showed me all that. It's like, it legit reminded me like, you know, like it's like not relatable, but like it kind of like is like the similarities. Like when Jesus went on the cross for all of us, like everything, like he's like, he knows how we feel. Right. Like he understands. And it's like I know how these kids feel, and I can understand like how you're feeling and like all of that. And it was just like the most surreal moment I think I've ever felt in my whole entire life. It was like the coolest thing. And I remember he gave me this one picture. And it was when I was on the phone with the suicide hotline. And I was like, this was when I was up in Idaho City. And I remember I was like leaning against my car, and it was like raining outside. And I was just talking to them. And I was like, you know, you just want someone to talk to, you know, just about your stuff. And I remember like, it wasn't from my point of view, but it was from like his, like how he was just watching me. Wow. And it was like the coolest thing, because it was like, you're with me even in my darkest times where I legit did not want to like be here. And you're just sitting there like watching me, you know? And it was like, just you're gonna make me cry. It's just like the coolest thing in the whole entire world. Like, it's just crazy. And I'm like so grateful. Like things happen for a reason. We might not understand why we go through what we go through, but I'm grateful for everything that I went through. I would never change it for the world. I mean, obviously, like I said, like I would never want to go through it again. Right. But, you know, like, I'm grateful. Like, I'm so grateful because I don't know where I would be if I was like still with my mom, you know? And my little brothers, they're doing amazing. They just started high school, so they're doing great, and it's just crazy. It's just, I don't know. It's just amazing. Legit.
I love it.
So fun.
This is really beautiful. I love what I keep hearing from both of you is, you know, in the hard, those are the times we don't know. We don't want that. Nobody wants to experience pain, to experience hard. And yet there's like this bigger picture. We have a bigger God who sees all and is with us and does allow us sometimes to go through really hard things, but not alone. You know, we might feel alone. We might feel totally in despair, but he has a bigger plan. And both of you can attest to that you've seen his bigger plan. And then you're coming at this not with a bitterness of it didn't go the way I wanted, but with a gratitude, even that it did go the way I didn't want it to. That's amazing. It's a testimony.
Yes.
Seriously, for sure. And it's like, I tell people, like, he really does make beauty for ashes. Like, everything you go through has a purpose. And it's especially like what the Holy Spirit has taught me, like going through like interns. We do an internship here at Capitol. So it's like building like a foundation of just like your biblical life and just like going forth and like getting more of an intimate relationship with the Lord. So that's a little shout out there.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic.
But like going through all that and like understanding like you'll have your highs and lows, like everything you go through, like you're going to be at the mountain for like at the top of the mountain for like 8 minutes and you're going to go right back down because we're never meant to be at the top. We're meant to like go through stuff because that's where everyone's is at the bottom, like in the basement. Like you're supposed to be at the bottom. You're not supposed to be at the top. You're there to bring people in and like everyone that's going through stuff, like everything you go through. It, like I said, it's not going to be like the same, but it's going to have similarities, but you can help them. Like everything that you go through, all the situations, everything, you're there to help others. You're there to guide them and direct them and, you know, just give them like words of insight and wisdom to be able to help them through those different seasons that they might be going into. And that's like the one thing that the Holy Spirit has taught me is like, you're going to have highs and lows, but everything you go through is for a reason, is to help others that are in the world that need help, you know?
There really is a joy that comes from gratitude. And you've seen both of you feel a purpose in what you've gone through. You've seen a purpose and that's a beautiful thing.
Well, and I think even like she was saying, like you look back and you can see all those things had purpose for the future.
Right.
And then what the word says, God uses everything for our good, but not just for our good, for other people's good.
Yes.
And I've watched her just like support and love these teenagers, especially obviously the teen girls, but when they're like, oh, you've been there too. Like, you get it. Oh, wow. Like I can only speak from a certain perspective,
right.
You know, because I've never been there, but you know, when I started this, I really wanted to bring on former foster youth because of that reason, that they can be like, hey, I was there, but this is where I am now. And, you know, we're a Christian organization. So everything we do, we get to speak life and love and Jesus into their life. And just this Sunday, we had a new girl come. She sat next to me and they did the altar call. And you know, when you're like, I want to look, but I don't want to like be invasive. But I was like, so I just leaned back and just quickly, and she just had her little hand like this, 13, and, you know, just going through something horrendous. I mean, she's removed from her family. Like, it's scary. Like, they don't know when they're going back. They don't know who they're like. We're all strangers to them. And like her being at that point of like, okay, I need Jesus in my life was like, I was like, wow,
it's always like the coolest thing.
It's
especially like one of our kids that we have, she went up to our youth camp and she like felt like the Holy Spirit and like all of that. And it was like cool just like seeing her
transform.
Yeah, transform. And then like now I kind of do like little Bible studies with her at the house. And so like she's like, do you have any scriptures for like this and this and this? And like I will list like everything down for her and just like talk to her about it and like, you know, just try to help and guide her.
Well, even their countenance changes when they encounter Jesus. Like she went up to camp kind of just scared, you know, nervous, like worried about everything. Like she literally wore worry on her. And she came home the minute I saw her, I noticed her countenance change. She was just full of joy.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Like it literally, she transformed right before our eyes. So even in this, like God gave me this vision of, creating homes for children, right? And so that's like the earthly thing, and that's needed, and we need these homes. But eternally, we are investing in eternity. We have children that are getting baptized, giving their life to Jesus, and I'm like, wow, this is so much more than I even envisioned it to be. So that's what's really been incredible.
Yeah.
So, and it's amazing seeing someone, Cece, use what she's gone through for good.
Yes.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, ladies, this has been a treat. And I just thank you so much for sharing, for giving us your time, but sharing your story and doing what you're doing. You're out there living out the gospel, being the hands and feet of Jesus, and keep it up. That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Well, I hope that today's episode encouraged you wherever you are on your foster care journey. We want you to stay connected, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you will never miss an episode. Also, we have great content at theforgotteninitiative.org. Thank you for watching. I cannot wait to be with you next time.